Welcome to El Mercado's 7th weekly wine tasting. Tonight we're going to be doing port wines from Quinta do Noval. We're doing a Ruby Black, we're doing a late bottle vintage 2003, we're doing a 10-year 20 port and a 20-year 20 port. Then after that we're going to talk about cigars. Port wines are, they're wines, they're fortified wines. But after about 2 to 3 days of fermentation, the fermentation is arrested by adding grape spirit to the wines. So you're going to have a lot of residual sugar and you're going to have higher alcohol content. That is basically what port wine is. Port wine came to be basically in the late 1600s. There were some trade wars going on between France and England. And William III put real high taxes on wines imported from France. So the English shippers went to Spain, and they first went to the coastal regions, Vino Verde, and they just didn't like those wines. They were too acidic, too light, so they started traveling up the Douro, and they got up the Douro, and they found these really intense red wines, and in particular, there was one winemaker up there that was arresting the fermentation with brandy and making semi-sweet, high alcoholic wines.
Now, the first one that we do have is Noval Black, which is their Ruby Port. It's pretty much their starter port, so it's very nice, fresh.
A Ruby Port is a port that has been aged for minimum 2 years, and it can be aged in anything from cement cast to wood to stainless steel, and it's usually a blend of vintages. So it's not one particular vintage, and it's not one particular area. They can source from any of the 3 areas. It's the simplest and the least expensive of the ports. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's just not aged as long.
Now, to add just a few more facts about this great vineyard, this great site, they didn't really declare their port wine until 1931, where they declared that vintage. So they're really the pioneers for this whole concept of port wines.
Let's taste this first one. Simple. Good amount of residual sugar in there. This one's like 18-20% alcohol, I'm sure. 19.5. And it's a simple one. I mean, it tastes really good. It's got good depth. It's got really good cherry fruit on it. Has that residual sugar that you expect, a little bit of heat, but it's balanced. I mean, it's nice. And this is not an expensive port. It's like an everyday drinking port. I do like it a lot. Now, let's move on to the LBV, or late bottle vintage port. Basically, late bottle vintage indicates that the port that's in this bottle is from one particular vintage. It's not a declared vintage, but it's a wine from a particular vintage. It's aged for at least 6 years in wood and then bottled. For my opinion, these are some of the better ports at the best values. They have a lot of phenolic compounds in them, really good chocolate, walnut. You know, it's aged a little bit longer, so you're going to get some of that
great complexity.
That complexity that comes out in it. Okay, now we're moving on to the Tony ports. The first one is a Tony 10, meaning that the average age of the blend is 10 years old. So you have some 10-year-old port wine that's been aging in wood for 10 years. Now, basically, Tony comes from the color of the wine. A true Tony gets its color from aging in wood. Over a period of time, the color will fade or precipitate out. So what it loses in color, it gains in complexity from the wood and from the oxidation of the grapes. This Tony is 10 years old. You'll see Tonys that are 10, 20, 30, 40, or 10, 20, 40, and the older it is, the more years, the more complexity it'll have, and usually the tonier the color. The Quinta do Noval 2010 is excellent, also very affordable if you're looking for a Tony wine. And this, you'll see more dried nuts, raisin fruit.
A little bit of that, a slight gemmy component to it, more of a dried fig, dried fruit component as well.
Even almost leaning toward sherry-like nose. Now we're going to go to the 2020. The average age of the blend is 20 years. Again, even more concentrated with the flavors, even more of that walnut, dried apricot, dried raisin, black walnut kind of flavors going on there. And you know, this one, cigars, think cheese, think dried nuts. Really pairs with a variety of different desserts and foods in general.
As Mike was saying, you know, the color's a lot lighter on this one. Just because it's lighter in color doesn't mean it will get off the track with the body and the flavor, you can still go with, you know, pretty good medium cigars going into like stronger cigars, because it has that a little bit of fruitiness, that dried fruit quality to it that would pair perfectly with this. It's a very interesting relationship between the cigars and the ports, because you have that great opposite attraction between the sweetness and the strength of the alcohol for the ports, and then the smokiness and the robust flavor of the cigars. Rudy was more than willing to help us tonight with our special pairing, and was able to give us 3 different groups of the different cigars that we can do. So we have the lighter style, the more medium-bodied style, and then the heavier style, which we'll do mostly with the vintage ports. So for the first 2, the Noble Black and the Noble LBV, we would mostly suggest lighter going into the medium bodies. So one of my favorites actually is the Oliva cigar right here. Rudy, would you mind telling us a little bit of the Oliva?
It's made in Dominican. It's controlled by one family. They not only blend a mild to medium, like most of the manufacturers, they manufacture different blends. You have Davidoff is probably the most exclusive cigar. There's only 400 appointed merchants in the U.S. that are authorized to carry this. The Opus X is also a rare cigar.
The Opus X will pair perfectly with both our vintage tawnies. So you have the 10 and the 20. I personally like it better with the 20, and it's just a magical experience, honestly.
It's for the end of the day.
Exactly.
After you've had a couple of meals.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us for our 7th week tasting, and hopefully we get to see you soon.
You will. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, welcome to our 7th wine tasting, and we're about to start our blind tasting portion of the night. So pretty much the way it works, I give you guys a 1-ounce portion, and then we go through the whole evaluation and try to guess what the wine is. Guys, what are you picking up on the aroma itself? Remember, don't be afraid. Oaky? Okay, slight oakiness to it.
Like apple-ish?
Apple-ish?
This could be like Western Australia as well.
Western Australia?
California.
California.
This is a 2007 West Australian Chardonnay.
Chardonnay?
I think a New World. New Zealand or Australia somewhere.
Okay, Australia, New World.
Chile.
Why?
Because it's a little bit strange.
It is actually Morgenhof, Chenin Blanc, Stellenbosch, Africa.
You're right. It's got a better nose than it has to taste.
That's right.
Okay.
I agree.
Northern Hemisphere red wine. My God.
You guys think it's Grenache?
Yeah, no, we're together.
Maupertuis, Counois, France.
I'm getting strawberries.
Okay.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It smells stronger than it tastes.
So you think it has a better aroma than it does body?
Yeah.
Okay. Italian. Anyone else?
I think it's
French?
French.
French? Barn and Goussier, Cabernet.
Where's it from?
From where? From where?
I get nervous. Bacon and maple. Maple bacon.
Herbaceous? Okay. So we got an Old World. What else are you guys picking up?
Tobacco, like fresh tobacco.
A little bit of the sweetness. Chianti.
Thank you for coming to our 7th weekly wine tasting here at Il Mercato. I want to say happy birthday to Connor.
Happy birthday.
Second birthday. Happy birthday, Connor.
Happy birthday.
We had a great wine tasting tonight.
Yes.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
everybody, for coming out, and we'll see you next Monday.
Yeah.